Hello, my name is Blue. I'm a Christian, and I believe everything that the Bible says and claims.
Hi, Blue. I'm B.S. Lewis. I'm here to tell you why your arguments for God make me feel blue.
Jesus, a man, was also God and brought people back from the dead.
It's a total fabrication.
That's impossible. He brought himself back from the dead.
It's an urban legend that never happened.
That's impossible. There's a few instances of talking animals in the Bible.
Not this time. It never happened.
Well, that's impossible. One time someone spontaneously turned into dust.
This one was invented by a writer. It never happened.
Yeah, some pretty crazy things happen in the Bible. So I must be crazy, right, for believing this. None of this is possible. Right?
You're not crazy. I'm the one that's crazy. When it comes to unaliving, thanks to modern medicine, it's a pretty frequent occurrence. I would hardly call it impossible. And as for talking animals...
All right, we're gonna sing, okay? Okay, can we do old... Very good.
Now the salty woman is kinda sus, no cap. But the only thing that you actually said back there that's logically impossible was that Jesus is God and man. That's what we call a category error. Here, I'll show you. Let's start by making two categories. We'll label one God and the other man. Now let's start adding traits that define the categories. God, immortal. Man, not immortal. Man, created. God, not created. God, all-powerful. Man, not all-powerful. Man, sin nature. God, no sin nature. I think you get my point. The hypostatic union of Jesus breaks the logical law of non-contradiction.
Episode 1. Is there a God? In this video, I'll give you 2 reasons why it's not crazy to believe that there is a God. I believe specifically in the God named Yahweh. He's the God in the Bible in Christianity. But I will not be arguing Yahweh for this video.
Well, that's convenient.
I will simply be arguing God. And the definition of God for this video will be an intelligent and powerful being who is behind the creation of the world. So these arguments could be for multiple gods, one God. The point is they're against the idea of no God.
I'm glad you gave us a definition of God to work with. You'd be surprised how often your theist brethren forget or just plain refuse to do that. I can't say I'm not disappointed that you're not going to use the fine-tuning and moral arguments to specifically prove Yahweh.
Oh, Lord. Oh, you are so big. Gosh, we're all really impressed down here, I can tell you.
But I understand why you'd want to argue for a more vague definition to establish a firm foundation for your more specific arguments down the road. Unfortunately, though, you didn't go vague enough. You just had to smuggle in the word creation to appease your ideological motivations, didn't ya? But I'm here to let you in on a little secret. Shh, come a little closer. Even if all of your philosophical arguments proved naturalism and atheism false, it still wouldn't prove creationism is true, because there's a third player in this game.
Here comes a challenger!
Pantheism, the belief that everything that exists is God. It accounts for everything from matter and energy to metaphysical claims like logic, consciousness, and objective morality. Plus, if you think that God is the singularity that transferred its properties to the known universe, you don't have to appeal to magic to skirt around that pesky first law of thermodynamics. You know, the one that says you can't create or destroy matter and energy, only transfer it? So according to science and Occam's razor, pantheism is already looking stronger than any theistic model that proposes that God is separate from its creation.
So the reason why I'm arguing the existence of God for this episode is because with all these crazy claims in the Bible that I believe in and will be arguing for in future videos, they are impossible without God. But with God, they are not impossible. For God is a higher dimensional being. He is to us as we are to Mario, just as a programmer can make crazy weird things happen in a video game, God can make crazy weird things happen in our life.
You don't need to be a creator to make crazy and weird things happen in a video game. You could be a hacker, or just someone who's familiar enough with the building blocks of that reality. I mean, have you seen the crazy and weird mods that the non-Bethesda employees have made for Fallout 4?
I've had enough, anyway.
He's still talking. Oh, now I gotta entertain you folks, don't I?
That's right. That's what you came here for, isn't it? It's much more entertaining than any old speech, huh?
What are you?
I'm a woman, baby. Can't you tell?
You don't look like any woman I've ever seen.
Then you are mentally retarded.
So, no. A pregnant virgin is not evidence for God. Need I remind you that through the wonders of modern science, we can hack the procreation system and impregnate a virgin through the process of in vitro fertilization?
Alright, enough intro. Let's get into my points. Point number 1, the likelihood of us evolving without God. So we know that there has to be either God, gods, or no God. And we know that we're here somehow. So in the idea, without God, we must have evolved on our own, right? So how exactly did we evolve on our own? Is the question many smart people have spent their lives researching, studying, and attempting to figure out the answer to. The theory of evolution. What I understand to be the most commonly accepted answer to the question of where did we come from. And I understand accepting it too. All the scientists and professors who study and teach it are way smarter than I'll ever be, and their theory isn't a shot in the dark either. It's well thought out and based off of observable facts of today. However, the thing I, and many others I know, get hung up on is the unlikelihood of it all happening this way. Now, I'm no scientist, and I hardly know how to do basic math, much less complicated, abstract statistics, but I do know how to do research, and I found that there's a trend of smart sciencey mathy professor people calculating the likelihood of specific things that the theory of evolution claims. And oftentimes the likelihood of the claim is calculated to be so unlikely that it is called impossible by the calculatee, the person who did the calculating. To make things simpler, I'll only go over one of these persons' work, or rather, one work by two people. The Anthropic Cosmological Principle is a book written by Barrow and Tipler, some big shot sciencey boys with all these credentials and stuff that make them credible. They calculated the likelihood of us humans evolving to something insanely unlikely. Here's a video of someone talking about it.
Barrow and Tipler, two physicists, in their book, The Anthropic Cosmological Principle, list 10 steps in the course of human evolution, each of which is so improbable that we...
Aw, hell to the no. If there's any clip that we're going to be listening to Lowbar Bill about on probabilities, it's going to be this one.
When I first heard the message of the gospel as a non-Christian high school student, that my sins could be forgiven by God, that God loved me, He loved Bill Craig, and that I could come to know Him and experience eternal life with God, I thought to myself, and I'm not kidding, I thought, if there is just one chance in a million that this is true, it's worth believing. And so my attitude toward this is just the opposite of Kyle's. Far from raising the bar or the epistemic standard that Christianity must meet to be believed, I lower it
to the 110,000th power.
But seriously though, in the original clip, Craig just shares a really small probability for the evolution of the human genome, then chalks it up to a miracle. Let's see what Blue has to say about this number.
Well, those are some numbers. 4 to the negative 180th power to the 110,000th power. Okay, if I convert this, and by I mean this guy who answered my Quora question, it equals to be a lot less than a 1% chance. It equals to be 0. Lots of zeros, 11,009,020,787 zeros to be exact, and then a 4. Okay, I mean, at this point, it's just not gonna happen. We should abandon the word unlikely and use the word impossible. With these numbers, I mean, that's a lot of zeros.
I don't blame you for getting hung up on such small numbers, Blue. It's probably the biggest reason for the success of the fine-tuning argument. So let's use this as an example to learn about probabilistic methods, and how it impacts one of the most handy tools in the skeptic's fanny pack. AMs Razor. This principle states when comparing two events, that the one with the fewest assertions will always be more statistically probable. Let's say that we flip a coin and it lands on heads. That's a 0.5 probability. We flip it twice on heads and it's a 0.25 probability. And a third time, 0.125. As you probably notice, with each coin flip or assertion, the probability is getting exponentially smaller. And given enough assertions, undoubtedly the result will be mind-bogglingly low. But the point of Occam's razor is to avoid being dazzled by those astoundingly low outcomes by comparing the likelihood of assertions in two competing claims. Just like we know that 2 coin flips landing on heads is exponentially more likely than 3 due to one less assertion, we would know that pantheism that I mentioned earlier in the video would be a more viable option than the creationism that you and Craig and Barrow and Tipler advocate for, because it accounts for everything that creationism accounts for, without the added assertion of special pleading around the first law of thermodynamics. In the interest of shortening this video, we're gonna go ahead and skip through the rest of this part. Blue is just pontificating on how low a probability has to be before it's considered impossible. The answer to that is 0, Blue. And if you'd like to learn more about that, research the laws of logic to find out more about true impossibilities. Blue also makes a comparison between the evolution of the human genome and higher probability events like winning the lotto, being struck by lightning, and flipping tails on a coin 100 times. I just ask that you pay special attention to this comparison point she brings up, as it's gonna play a rather big role in my rebuttal at the end of this section.
To my next thing. Alright, so with all this information that I just gave you, there are a few different conclusions we can come to. Let's talk about the conclusions. Conclusion number 1. The numbers given to us by Barrow and Tipler are wrong. They made a mistake. They messed up with the math. It's possible. I obviously can't check their math for them, but they do seem to be pretty well acclaimed among the smarts, which gives them credibility as well as their degrees and titles, so they're worth listening to if you ask me, but you can do your own research and decide for yourself, of course. Conclusion number 2. Evolution as we know it is wrong, because it's just too statistically unlikely, which means some other form of evolution without God is true. We just haven't figured it out yet. Yeah, maybe. I don't think so because of the evidence I have for Yahweh, God of the Bible, but based on just what information I'm putting in this video, yeah, that's an acceptable conclusion to come to. Conclusion number 3. There is a God, an intelligent mind who manipulated things so we could come about. Again, a pretty acceptable answer. If there's an intelligent being to pick out the one black dot out of the 11 million red ones, then he'll get it. Like, yeah, that's an acceptable answer. Conclusion number 4. There's a God who brought us about through some other means that is not evolution. Also acceptable answer. Yeah, I mean, those are the 4 answers I could think of. If you can think of another, let me know. And let me know which conclusion you come to after hearing my points. What do you think? And It's fine if you didn't choose a conclusion, because it's more information is always ideal. So I totally respect that.
Okay, let's respond to these 4 points. 1. I don't know if Barrow and Tipler made a mistake, but I don't feel the need to check them because I'm not intimidated by small numbers. 2. That's the beauty of science. Evolution as we know it could be wrong. If further evidence arose that conflicted with Barrow and Tipler's research, well, we would scrap it. But if they're right, their research would have predictive power that could possibly uncover more knowledge on the topic of evolution. 3. By saying God controls evolution, you're just turning natural selection into supernatural selection. And I don't really see any reason to do that. 4. So I think you're basically hinting at magic here. If young Earth creationists want to be taken seriously, then they need to demonstrate an alternate mechanism to the genome besides evolution. Now let's get on to the 3 main objections that I have with your argument, Blue. So this first point is probably one of the main reasons I'm an atheist instead of a pantheist. Let's call it a lack of contrast. Do you remember earlier when you were comparing the probability of lightning strikes and coin flips to the human genome? Well, you can't do that for God. All probabilities operate under the philosophical epistemology of what's called methodological naturalism. No mathematician, as far as I'm aware, has ever proposed a mathematical formula for calculating a probability based on the supernatural. I mean, where would they even begin to plumb the depths of the mysterious mind that is God and what he will do and won't do, and if he'll do this thing and won't do that? So if we're going to make a comparison between the naturalistic evolution of the human genome and God did it, sure, we'll have a real tiny number on the naturalistic side, but we'll just have a question mark on the supernatural side. So we won't be able to make that greater than, less than, or equal to evaluation. But hypothetically speaking, if we were able to formulate a supernatural probability, it could be exponentially smaller than the naturalistic one. Alrighty, on to the second point. I like to call this one casting a wide net for a fine tuna. Whether we're talking about the probability of evolution for the human genome, or the distance of the Earth from the Sun, or the likelihood of any environmental factors for the formation of life, it's usually the precise and specific data that impresses people with these arguments. That's the fine in fine-tuning. But the all-powerful definition of God just wrecks that. Because if I asked you if your God could make life that thrived on the sun, or in the depths of space, or even in a black hole, I'm venturing to guess that your answer would be yes. Which kinda makes fine-tuning obsolete. And if you think about it, fine-tuning seems to make your God less than all-powerful. And my final point against fine-tuning is determinism. It just couldn't be any other way. And if that's true, that really low probability that Barrow and Tipler came up with is actually a 1, because it would be impossible for it to be anything else. And while I think it's probably impossible to prove determinism right or wrong, you'd have a really hard time trying to argue against it, because all logical syllogisms and probabilities rely on the cause and effect nature proposed by, guess what? Determinism. And while this idea is popular with naturalists, there's also a Christian version called Calvinism, which may or may not play into my rebuttal for your next point. It even applies to pantheism. Determinism would state that due to the immutable nature of the pantheistic God, the very fundamental building blocks of our reality couldn't have been any other way. I hope that helps, Blue. Let's check out your next argument.
Okay, point number 2, morality. Alright, so this one's going to be a little bit roundabout, so stay with me. Good and evil are fact. They are adjective and not subjective.
Wait, abjective? Abject. Sunk to or existing in a low state or condition, very bad or severe. Or the second one, cast down in spirit, servile, or spiritless. Well, I kinda agree with that second one, but I think you mean objective, which means stance independent. But theistic morality wouldn't qualify for that, because your God is a subject who has a stance on morality.
Just like 5 plus 5 is 10 and not whatever number you want it to be. What is good is what is good, and not whatever you want it to be. Some have presented to me the idea of good being subjective, simply an opinion of, like, what your favorite color is. I reject this idea, because, for one, it would mean saying people like Hitler, who did horrible, horrible things, weren't actually horrible. They're just horrible in my eyes. And that's not true. What Hitler did was factually evil, not, in my opinion, evil. Disagreeing with me would mean disagreeing with yourself. You know what Hitler did was evil, and you probably have experiences where someone did something evil to you or someone that you love, and you knew it was wrong.
Well, this is where that probabilistic argument for fine-tuning is gonna come back and bite you in the blue teeth. Of course I think the Holocaust was horrible. Oh, look at the cute baby! Did you ever wonder what the odds would be that this little guy would grow up to cause one of the greatest tragedies that the world has ever known? Well, we know he had to have a mother and a father, and considering that the world population around that time was about 2.3 billion, the odds of those two lovebirds finding each other would be about 1 in 1.15 billion. We also know that every individual person is a unique combination of one sperm and one egg, which gives us a 1 in 500 chance based on the amount of eggs that a woman produces in her lifetime, times a 1 in 1 quadrillion chance based on the amount of sperm that a man produces during his lifetime. So that's only using two factors, world population size and fertility rates. And when we multiply those two numbers together, we get, drumroll please. How should I know? Do I look like Barrow and Tipler? But I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me, Blue.
That's a lot of zeros.
So given the extremely low probability of the mustached menace existing, the most reasonable option is to conclude that God caused the Holocaust. And here's a clip of a couple Christians that agree with that conclusion.
That's a major issue because you're saying, I believe in a different God. You believe in a God that predestined and wanted and was glorified by the Holocaust happening, and is glorified and wanted sex trafficking to happening, and slavery to happening. This is not, if you want to go in the same God thing,
you don't believe in
I don't believe in the God that predestined when the Holocaust happened. You're right. I believe in the true God.
Predestined the cross. Yes or no? Yes or no?
I do believe that God planned for the crucifixion to happen. I do not believe he planned or wanted for the Holocaust to happen. That's the difference between you and I.
Ever anyone more innocent than Jesus Christ?
Well, of course not.
Okay, so God predestined the horrific crucifixion and murder of the most innocent man who ever existed, which means that's significantly greater than any example you've given me, because every person you just mentioned was a sinner rightly under the wrath of God. You recognize that Acts chapter 4...
The Holocaust was the wrath of God?
Every person who dies in this world is under the wrath of God.
Good. Happy for that clarification.
Here, hold on. Now my turn to step in.
Okay.
My turn.
All right. Okay.
So here's what you're neglecting to notice is that not only are you promoting a God that is not the God of the Scriptures, the God who says he declares the end from the beginning and from ancient times, things which have not been done, saying, my purpose will be established and I will accomplish all my good pleasure. Our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Whatever the Lord pleases, he does in heaven and on earth, in the seas and in all the deeps. That's not the God of Mormonism.
It absolutely is.
If I could finish, you just said that it wasn't because you said that your God was impotent and had nothing to do with the Holocaust.
The only thing God had to do with the Holocaust was rescuing the people and doing good in it.
My God declared the end from the beginning, and even in the midst of a rebellious, hostile, evil, wicked world of people who are at war with their Creator, he still was able to sovereignly wield his purposes and control. In a fallen world, the Holocaust did not surprise my God. My God was in charge of the Holocaust.
Your God wanted the Holocaust to happen.
Oh, my God was
absolutely
determined to glorify himself through everything that happens in this world. Watch. Through either his grace or his justice, God will be glorified.
Reason number 2 of why I believe good is fact and not opinion. We all agree that this world is messed up. And this is true throughout our history. Countless horrible things have happened. It's always been like this. This world has always been messed up. And you know this, and I know this. But how do we know this is the question. When I see a circle that looks like this, I know it's not a perfect circle, because I've seen a perfect circle before. I know that this circle is wrong because this circle is right. But if the world has always been wrong, then how do we know that it is wrong? If someone's never seen a perfect circle, but only the wonky circle, they will not call it wonky. They would have no reason to call it wonky. They would simply call it a circle, because they've never seen a good circle. We've never seen a good world. And yet, we know it's bad. You know it's bad, I know it's bad, we instinctually know it's bad. Why? In the world, it's survival of the fittest, but we know that's not okay. We know we need to help the poor. We know we need to protect the weak. Why would that be? Unless there's a God, some sort of creator who has preferences, who prefers kindness over cruelty, who prefers forgiveness over revenge, and he decided to, for some reason or another, install those same preferences into us.
You're really tugging on my heartstrings there, Blue. I just wish you did the same comparisons between natural and supernatural probabilities as you do between the floppy and the perfect circles. It would be great if you could just point at that perfect circle and me and you could both agree, hey, that's a perfect circle. But instead, you did a lot of pointing at you and a lot of pointing at me, as if you think subjective morality means that people can't agree on what is harm. Objective morality is supposed to be stance independent, which means it should be something that's clear to both of us, like gravity. I don't think I've heard anyone say, it's just my opinion, I'm falling. But instead, what we see is a bunch of people with their personal perspectives and their ideas on what would make the perfect world, and they go about to implement it themselves. That's pretty much the basis of all the world religions and politics.
Okay, video done. That took me approximately over 300 hours to make, but the world for you, my 15 subscribers. The world for you.
Wow! From 15 subs to 16,000 in 3 years? Congrats, Blue. I'm always happy to see animators succeed. I haven't even broken 1,000 in the 3 years I've been on YouTube. Perhaps I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little salty like Lot's wife.
So basically, to summarize, my first point is, it's statistically impossible for evolution to have happened, which means the world came about some other way. And my second point was, because we know that there is evil in the world, must mean that someone told us there was evil in the world. If we were developed naturally, we'd be like the animals and just do what was best for us. It would be survival of the fittest, and we wouldn't see anything wrong with that. So yeah, let me know what you think. Point out where I'm wrong, point out where I'm right, and leave me a comment. It'll be fun. We'll talk about it. It's fun. I'm glad this video is over. I spent so much time on it. Alright, I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Alright, I'm gonna drop the kitty cartoon voice for the outro. Blue, I gotta say that you seem like a really sweet young lady. And I hope I didn't go too hard on you in this video. I definitely tried to pull some punches compared to my normal content. I also gotta say I'm really loving your art and your presentation style. It's pretty much the main reason why I did a response to this video. Hopefully I did a good job responding to your arguments and it gave you something to think about. And a bit of constructive criticism I'd leave you with would be, perhaps study evolution from a non-Christian perspective. Some of the things you were saying in here about it demonstrate your lack of knowledge on the subject. Other than that, yeah, keep up the good work. Goodbye.